Hi, good afternoon or morning, depending upon where you are. Welcome. My name is Frank Wilderson. I'm the chair of African American Studies at University of California, Irvine. And we're really excited because so many high school students have expressed an interest in coming to UC Irvine, and B, an interest in majoring in African American Studies. So with me today are two of my esteemed colleagues who have a lot of things to say that are different, but the things that they have which are in common will be quite interesting to you as high school students. First, we have Bridget Cooks, who is a full professor of African American Studies and art history. What that means is that she works two jobs and does twice as much work, gets half as much money. Uh, Basically, it means that she's a professor in African American Studies and a professor in art history. She was also an undergraduate here at UC Irvine. She's going to tell you a bit about that. And in my left-hand corner, I don't know what it looks like on your screen, but we have John Murillo, who is a assistant professor recently hired. We're very happy to have him here. And his full position is in African American Studies. He'll tell you more about what he does in his journey. And he too was an undergraduate at UC Irvine. So what I'd like to do first is talk to Bridget.
Okay.
Bridget, you came here. When did you come here? Tell
Hi.
a little bit about your experience in that period and anything you want to talk about of how you got to be from an undergraduate at UC Irvine to a professor at UC Irvine in the African American Studies and Art History Department. Take it away.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody, and we hope that what we have to say will help you become more excited about being here at UCI and African American Studies. I came here way before you were born in 1989. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and coming to Irvine was a very different place than LA. I came here to be a painter, and I was a studio art major, is in the School of the Arts. And I started making art and realized that I wanted to know more about the history of art. So I added the art history major and became very seduced by all of the crazy stories I heard, Vincent van Gogh cutting off his ear and giving it to a prostitute, and amazing gallery shows that changed the world and that kind of thing. So I loved it. I met people from all over the world, countries I'd never heard of when I was a teenager, and I really was excited about that experience. I also found that in college, my professors took me much more seriously than my high school teachers. And I really enjoyed being treated like I had something to contribute. That had a lot to do with my decision to come back to UCI, but also to just become a professor because I had so much respect for my professors. So one of the things that I quickly realized, also being an art history major, was that there weren't any Black artists in my books. And I only knew about a handful of contemporary artists who are African American. A couple taught here at UCI, and others I knew about from growing up in LA. So I wanted to go to graduate school because I loved learning, I loved reading, and felt that I could contribute to this lack of historical record and contribute to the knowledge of African American people. Um, so I was able to go to graduate school. I had a first career working in museums, working at LACMA, at the National Gallery, at the Oakland Museum, different places. And then taught at Santa Clara University, focusing on African American artists. And there I had the same kind of split position that Professor Wilderson mentioned. And there I was in ethnic studies and art history. And then I was recruited to come here to my alma mater. And so I have a split position in African American studies and art history. So my focus is primarily on African American artists, but I also teach classes that are art history only and classes that are African American studies only.
Thank you, Bridget. John Murillo, tell us a little bit about your, so Bridget came in '89 to UCI. When did you come to UCI?
I started in 2007, fall 2007. So I graduated in June of that year from high school. And it's different for me, at least in terms of how it was socially and culturally. I grew up I began in LA. You know, I at least lived like in Inglewood with my family. And then we moved to Cerritos, which, if anybody's been to Cerritos, is just a smaller, less interesting Irvine. So some people think it's hard to imagine, but it's the same. It's like the same place. So I was very used to the demographics. I was very used to the same kind of exposure to food and culture that was the same as where I grew up. So it was like a very familiar experience, just in a bigger scale for me. As opposed to going into a school with like 3,000 people, it's with 20 something thousand, but it broke down almost the same way demographically. And so it was like, it wasn't really a culture shock for me. It was like I would just kind of move to a bigger version of where I was already. So it wasn't like a really difficult transition. I feel the same way that Bridget does about how when I got here, it was very easy to be taken seriously by my professors. Which I had a few high school students high school teachers that were like that way, but it was sort of a rarity more than it was like the common experience. And when I got here, almost every class I took was very open to hearing what I thought and what I had to say. And so I felt more engaged, and I felt more active, like, and interested. Like my interest was being rewarded in my class in a way that it probably wasn't in the high school, where everything is standardized testing and all that. So here it was just whatever the professor wanted. So if we shared an interest, it was pretty easy to kind of build a relationship that way. So that was really transformative for me as a scholar and as like a thinker, trying to find what they liked and what they didn't like. I was not on path to being in the humanities at all. I was supposed to be, first my eyes were on astrophysics, and I came here prepared to do some weird physics based degree and do research on black holes and stuff like that. And then I took one class in English. I took one class in psychology, in like the neuroscience part of psychology. There's two different majors here at UCI. One's cognitive science, which is more like the brain stuff, and one is more psychology and social behavior, which is more the social clinical stuff that you might normally see on like a TV show, like the counselors. So I chose the more sciencey side because I was already kind of doing science stuff, and I fell into that. So I changed my whole mind. I was going to be a psychiatrist now, and I was going through college, like full plans to go to med school, which med school, doing my biology classes and all that stuff while I was doing my English and while I was doing my cog sci. And then I took a sociology class, and I was like, oh, maybe I want to do this, social, like, no, now I'm trying to wake up socially. So that who's Karl Marx and Marxism? And, Frank knows because I had a 3-hour class with him and Chuck O'Connell when I was here at night. And I was real annoying with how avowedly Marxist I was. And, so it wasn't until my senior year in college that I was really invested in African American studies, and that I found a footing in the Black Student Union. And I took a class with a professor on campus who's still here. He's the chair of the English now. And he's the one who recommended that maybe I'd be interested in going to grad school in the humanities. Maybe I want to be a professor. Maybe I have a knack for writing. And, I always liked writing. It wasn't like new to me that I could write, but to do it in a way that was like a career with like a teaching, background, like with something that I could turn this into work that I could do. I didn't consider that. I had already gone through, research, physics research, neuroscience, psychiatry. I don't know what I was gonna do. And so I just kind of followed along and saw where it went. And I ended up going to grad school for English. Um, and then it's not like, oh, I went to grad school in English and I came here. Yeah, I had a couple years between when I got my degree and when I finally got the job here, which was really fortuitous. But I was doing tutoring, like I was doing tutoring at places, the cram schools. I'm sure a lot of people know what those are. You go to school for 6 hours and then after school, basically. I was doing that kind of tutoring, being paid under the table. And I had a one semester as an adjunct lecturer at Cal State Dominguez Hills that I really loved. And it just didn't end up working out. And then that's when I was in the process of trying to get the job here. So it was a little bit of a windy route for me to end up being in African American studies, but it's the path that got me here, and it's I wouldn't trade it. So yeah.
Thank you both, Professor Cooks and Professor Murillo, Bridget and John. So let me ask you, I mean, we're told by admissions and the dean's office that there's this burgeoning interest amongst high school students in African American studies in general and African American studies at UC Irvine in particular. And I think that, one can say, well, it's obvious why this interest has happened now, but let's assume that it's not obvious. I just want to open this up to either one of you. What do either one of you ascribe to this spike in high school students in the interest in African American studies, number one, and number two, from both of you, what is so special about African American studies at UC Irvine? We don't want to badmouth other departments across the country, but we want to say, what is it? What can you get out of this that's really, really special? Bridget, do you have something?
Yeah, to answer the first part of that prompt, I mean, certainly, I think there is worldwide more interest, or at least focus, on African American life, how we survive, how we exist because of the blatant violence that is ascribed, I think, popularly to the recording of George Floyd's murder. That experience, that video, that trauma was surprising to many people, and that is surprising to me. I really have been shocked and annoyed when people say, I can't believe that happened and it happened in America. And I think part of what may have to do with the spike in students wanting to study comes from two things. One is a fantastic high school education where they're actually talking about these issues and students want to continue in that way. They have the vision to see where we need to go next, and they want to come to UCI to do it because we're the best Department of African American Studies in the world. I mean, that's that. Another way to think about it is that high school students are really realizing how much they do not know about African American people, and that their understanding of American history is in conflict with the kind of values that they're seeing expressed through anti-Black activity on a daily basis. So that's my first response to why I think we have this spike in interest. The other thing is, when I say that African American studies here at UCI is the best, it's true. I mean, I don't get a commission for how many students come to UCI as majors. I mean, there's nothing in it for me to try to sell African American studies, except there's a kind of joy knowing that I have such amazing colleagues, that the way that African American studies is structured here is inherently interdisciplinary, that we have people who are into critical theory, into art history, into astrophysics, into poetry, into music, into dance. It's a place where you can really learn about, appreciate, and contribute to the endless complexity and dynamism of what Blackness is. And that's what makes us the best department.
Thank you very much. I wanted to say that, but I didn't know if I could. Am I still visible? Because I am,
Yes.
okay, very good. If I'm visible, then that's all that matters. I don't know where I went to. Oh, there I did. Okay. All right. John, the same thing to you, you know?
I have to follow that up.
Well, you can repeat. You know?
Let me repeat. I mean, yeah, I think. Well, I think, yeah, I have that same mixture of like of an assessment of why people are probably more interested in African American studies and Black thought and work that addresses what's actually happening in front of them every single day, all the time. I mean, was it 2 days ago that in Philadelphia? I mean, it's ongoing, and so it's becoming, in some people's mind, becoming more and more hard to avoid uh, avoid looking at it, right? Avoid seeing it and learning about it and knowing about it, and because you can't stifle your at least your exposure to it, you're compelled to, at least whether you're willing to or not, ask questions in your mind about these things. And some of us are more willing than they maybe have been before to pursue those questions that naturally occur when you see yet another Black person brutalized by the police, or yet another statistic about the still poisoned water of Flint, Michigan, years later. And that's not the only city that's like that, right? Like we get this information that's unrelenting and unremitting, and because of that, I don't know. I think that, plus the advent of social media and the availability of the information, means that kids get this information a lot younger than maybe we did when I didn't get any of this information until I got to college, but some of these people 12, 13 years old start finding out about all this stuff that's happening, go through all of high school wondering about it, and then can arrive at college education already primed to be like, I really need to find an investigation, to perform an investigation of this stuff. And I think that that's a shift in the sort of constancy of all that we see. Like maybe one thing that's like changed is the earliness that some people are exposed to this. And then also, like, some of us are doing so much work that is getting more attention because it is brilliant, good work. It's work that is making waves because it is unignorable. It is shifting the language and landscape of how we think about Blackness in the world and against the world. And that's why people want to come here. We have our department specifically can rattle off book after book and piece after piece that has made endless waves that are still breaking, right? A decade later or even longer later, in African American studies. And no shade to anybody else, but that's really the only department that does that, right? Like, why wouldn't you want to come here? This is the place where, to use the same metaphor, the next wave of Black studies is happening, and you want to ride that wave, right? So it's not surprising to me that people are finally are becoming more excited about this program in particular. And we've got a lot of great people here. I took, I didn't take a class with Frank, Jared, Bridget, Tiffany, whoever, right? I didn't, and I was compelled to come here, right? Not having taken a class with them, I only met them as people, and met them in grad school when I was struggling through things, right? And that was enough to compel me. So, if those fleeting moments can make somebody want to like devote their life to this work, I'm assuming that full-on engagement and classes and stuff like that will, it makes it impossible to not want to be a part of that. So it's an irresistible thing, for a couple reasons. It's irresistible because it feels like the only thing that will answer the questions that you might have about what it is to be Black in the world. But it's also an irresistible thing because the people here have made an environment and cultivated a space for Black studies that there isn't anywhere else. And yeah, there's no question this is the best place for Black studies in the world. That's not a controversial statement to me. So
it's not a controversial statement. And for those of you in high school who are thinking that we are just three egotistical big heads out here, let me inform you that were you to go to another university and major in Black studies or African American studies, you would be reading the books of the people in our department. That's why it's not a controversial.
yeah,
not a controversial statement. Okay.
yeah.
If you are studying Black people and art history or anything about art, you will be reading Bridget Cook's.
That's true. That's true.
It's just true. It's just true.
It is true.
Yeah.
You will be somewhere with really brilliant professors, but you will not be reading their books as much as you're reading our books. Okay, and the reason I can say this is because in 2012, there was a national audit done of our university and of our department. And this is one of the things that came out, which is to say that the books and the articles that are coming out of the African American Studies department at UC Irvine are influencing, check this out, high schoolers, are influencing the way thought is thought. That's bad. That's some badass stuff. The way thought is thought. This is what the national audit said, okay? That people are turning to our books and articles, okay? So there's, and then think about this. John's next book takes Black suffering, Black literature, and juxtaposes it with theoretical physics. How profound is that? Okay. I have personally a degree in critical theory, which is the explanation of stasis and change, but it's also work that talks about what does it mean to be? What does it mean to be a relational being? Okay. And I have a degree, similar like arts with Bridget in a master's in fine arts in creative writing. And so my books are read along those vectors. I just think that if you want the power of understanding to explain, especially for your Black students in high school, and stuff is happening. Like John taught in South Central, Bridget comes from LA. I don't come from LA, but I taught for a year in the Compton Unified School District, and I saw things in Compton Unified School District that were horrific forms of policing and lack of resources that I had not seen in Soweto when I lived in South Africa for 5 years. If you want to understand what it means to be Black in this world, come to UC Irvine, because we're not only explaining it to you, simultaneously we're explaining it to the world, okay? Professor Jared Sexton is working towards another degree in psychoanalysis, okay? So as what Professor Cooks said about interdisciplinary work, we're all over the board. You want to study art? Come to African American Studies. You want to study literature? Come to African American Studies. You want to study critical theoretical physics? Come to African American Studies. That's how bad we are. You know, and we don't say this. Other people say this. Okay, so it's really, really, I'm very happy about your enthusiasm, all those you high school students who led up to that. I would like to now ask specifically. So what I'm trying to say is that you should know this, high schoolers. In the 1980s and 90s, the University of California, Berkeley, was thought to be the #1 place to go for critical theory. Now the #1 place to go is the humanities, the School of Humanities at UC Irvine. That's according to US News and World Report. The #1 place to go to become a critical theorist is UC Berkeley Humanities.
Or UC Irvine Humanities. It was Berkeley, but now it's UCI. Yes.
Brain fog. I have a degree. My PhD is from Berkeley. It's UC Irvine. Thank you very much. It's UC Irvine. And we are one of the departments in the humanities at UC Irvine, which is making it #1. I want to segue from that into just a kind of not your total ensemble of courses, but give us like one or two courses that you teach, Bridget, and that you teach, John, that are really important to you and that you feel could do something for people if they take it. Give us an example.
Sure. So a couple of examples I can give you are classes that overlap with art history. And I should say that my focus for these classes are visual literacy. So I think that all of us are bombarded with images, so many that it's difficult to process them. They come fast and furiously. And what I do in my classes is to help us focus on images of Black people and images that Black people make. So I do that in an ensemble of courses. I have a 2-quarter course on African American artists that starts in the 17th century and comes up to today over 2 quarters. I have a class that focuses specifically on images of Black women, and that being not just African American women. And then also the kind of work that Black women make. So that's the class that focuses internationally on self-representation and representation. And then I have another class that I'll mention on African Americans and photography. So similarly, it's about representations of African American people in particular in photography, and then the kinds of work that African American photographers are making.
Thank you. John?
I have a few. I mean, I'm a newbie here, I guess, but I have a few classes. One that has been recurring, but I'll get to that one last. I teach, one of my best classes that I've had so far was a class that was centered on Black speculative literature. So, Black sci-fi, Black fantasy, the works of Octavia Butler, some Toni Morrison work, and then the contemporary writers too. That if you're into it, they're getting TV shows made about their books, right? Nnedi Okorafor, right? I did an interview with her for, I think, the UCI Big Read, and that was really, which was amazing. I rarely get to talk to an author that I love that much, right? But she writes sci-fi fiction about dystopian African societies and magic, and technology and techno witchcraft, right? Like things that are kind of unimaginable, but really, really, really well and really brilliantly done, and really deeply imaginative, but never leaving Black life by the wayside for the sake of being magical or being imaginative, right? We deal with sort of canonical people like I've taught Octavia Butler and Toni Morrison, and the foundational sort of impact that their work has had on everything written ever since. And then we look at with contemporary authors like N.K. Jemisin and Nnedi Okorafor and Tomi Adeyemi, right? All three of whom have a TV show or a film being made about each of their novels right now, for different. I think HBO is doing Nnedi Okorafor's Who Fears Death, and USA is doing N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Kingdom series, which is about a sort of African society that is perpetually in a state of apocalypse. Like it keeps doing it over and over again and not learning any lessons. And then Tomi Adeyemi, who wrote what people have kind of wrongly but usefully called the sort of Black Harry Potter series, right? Like it's so much more than that, but it's gotten that level of acclaim and that level of interest, and it will be probably that big. So we teach works that are contemporary and things that you might know about, but a lot of things you might not hear about because, Black speculative fiction is kind of what my favorite thing to teach. But my other class that I really enjoy teaching, which I've done twice now, is a TV show class, a class on Black television. And we're in the middle of that right now. And that's sort of my, I get a lot of signups for that class because it has TV in the title, right? But, we watch a lot of Black TV shows. This year, we kind of went more contemporary with all the material. We're watching things like Lovecraft Country and things that are on television now. I May Destroy You, right? A lot of Black brilliance on display on TV shows that do some of the, help stage conversations about some of the theoretical work that we're doing as faculty here on screens in ways that people can probably, see and think about in a different capacity. So that's my favorite class to teach right now, which is fitting because the class that we had today was on the show Dear White People and the UC, the college experience of Black students specifically. And so the whole class was centered around that. And a lot of Black students in the class got to speak about, honestly about their experiences on campus. And yeah, I think it's my most natural feeling class that I kind of enjoy doing because it's so easy to talk about stuff like that. But I'm teaching 40A now, and you'll learn when you come here. When you take the 40 series, which is the introductory series to all AFAM classes, which is a very foundational class, and it's really important to take because it lays all the groundwork for all the other cool stuff that we do here in a way that is both rigorous and very imaginative in the way we do things. It's not a sort of traditionalist chronological approach to things. It's a theoretical approach that privileges the question, what is it to be Black in the world? And, we ask that question 3 different ways across the 40 series. And I feel like it's a privilege for me to be able to teach the first class this year. So, I have those, that really does capture almost everything I've done here so far in the last 2 years. But yeah, those are my highlights, I guess.
Thank you both. And John mentioned Lovecraft Country, and I just want to put a little plug in that the producer and writers were talking about me and my book with respect to one of the episodes that they put out most recently. So you can see that Afro-Pessimism, which is a book that I wrote, has made an impact in the way in which even someone in popular culture thinks about the way they do a show.
Can you later let us know what episode that is? Because I really want to read about that connection.
I will. I was just told this the other day, but I will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw it on the internet where they had said how this episode resonates with something I said in my book, Afro.
Wow.
Wow.
Can I say something too, just adding to what John said? I love the thinking about Lovecraft Country because part of what that show does is they recreate famous, or I don't know how famous they are, but they recreate photographs by Black photographers.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to start teaching about how they remake Gordon Parks pictures that, unless you knew the photographs, you wouldn't understand the citation. So that's part of the visual literacy. I'm just imagining how exciting it could be to be an undergraduate and take classes with all of us. I mean, they could learn something about Lovecraft Country in all 3 of our courses, and we're only 3 of the faculty. So there's a lot of overlap and synergy and chemistry between us.
Yeah. Well, thank you both very much. I think that high school students have gotten an idea about what we do in African American studies. Also, a sense that we actually are so interesting and important that 2 people came through here as undergraduates and then came back as professors. So, the kinds of jobs you can get, people think about the corporate world and all this kind of thing. But another job you can get after African American studies is a job of a professor, which is highly fulfilling. And I want to tell you that when Bridget started in 1989, John started school in 2007, I started in 1974, okay? And I worked for 10 years as a stockbroker, which was highly unrewarding, shrunk my brain, made a lot of money, but at the end of the day, I'm not that. Making money wasn't the #1 thing in my life. Being able to explain my existence and help me learn how to explain Black existence to other people so that I don't feel as isolated in the world as I am as they try to make me feel. I think that's very, very important. There's a lot of people who do things like travel abroad, which you can, there's a program that goes to Ghana. One of our affiliate faculty members takes people on. There are internships. I just really encourage you to continue with your interest at UC Irvine in general and African American studies in particular. And we'll be here waiting and ready for you. Anything else I want to add to that?
Can I just say to everyone that Professor Wilderson is up for his second National Book Award. We're talking about, the significance of the scholarship that comes out of the department. He's already won for his first book a National Book Award, and now is up for the second incredibly prestigious award for a book that just came out in April. So it's, I know there's a lot of, it might seem like we're being very self-congratulatory, but it is important to celebrate accomplishments. And there is a lot to celebrate here, and you can learn a lot from us. We learn a lot from each other.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to add that, in addition to all the classes and coursework stuff that we have, there's a community here. It's not maybe the biggest community, but it's a community, and it's a tight-knit community that builds its own things. When I was here as an undergraduate, we had a magazine called Emoji that my wife, who I met here, founded, right? And I have some copies here, some of the covers that we have of the old ones. This is the very first one from fall 2009. And this is spring 2010. I can't find the winter one, which is an all black cover, which is like the coolest one. And then this is one from one of our students, our friend Chicole. She was taken for the image of that during a performance of a poem during a rally. And we were able to make something here that because of the conditions of being here and because of the education that we were getting in the departments, in the FAM department, and also because, we felt like we had something to say in a space that seemed willing to listen to it, and they were willing to listen to it. We decided to make something we thought was beautiful, and it became something that bonded us together. All of us that wrote for this magazine still keep in touch quite a bit, even though we're all around the country doing completely different things with completely different lifestyles, different outlooks on everything, even sometimes different political associations, affiliations, but we built something here. And, we did that because in large part of the support that we got from the professors and the staff members of the African American Studies Department and the education that we were getting from them. I don't think we would have been able to articulate ourselves the way we did and to speak confidently and to speak, creatively the way we did if we didn't do it here and we didn't do it with the leadership and the guidance that we had here. And so, I feel sort of blessed to be able to contribute to that again on my own as a professor instead of as a student. And we do plan, now that we sort of live nearby the school, my wife and I, to restart the magazine. And that might be another outlet for you to find a space for your voice, to build another community, and to make it your own, to make something that articulates you as a Black person and everything that you learn from us and learn from everybody in our community here. So I just want to say that there's the classes, and then there's the professors, and then there's also you and what you build here. And I think there's not many places where you can build what we were able to build here. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Bridget Cooks, Professor John Murillo, and thank you to all the high school students who showed an interest in our department. Please come to UCI, check us out, and major in African American Studies. Have a good day. Take care.